Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Stories of the news. Lagos State Police Command confirms that unrest that broke out at March 12 is under control. APC releases primary election timetable for Kogi, Bayelsa and Imo State governorship race. On the foreign scene, floods kill at least 10 people in southern Mozambique. Good afternoon and welcome to Spring News at 12 on Western Spring Television. My name is Okpayamuni. The Lagos State Police Public Relations Officer Benjamin Undeyi has confirmed that the initial unrest that broke out at the March 12 area of Lagos State is under control. The State Police PRO also confirmed that free movement has been restored to the area. It was reported that fighting erupted in some areas on the Lagos-Ikorodu Expressway in Lagos State this morning over the scarcity of the new Naira notes and the hardship the policy has thrown Nigerians. It was gathered that suspected touts in Mile 12, K2 and Ojota areas on the expressway took to the road, attacking commuters and creating chaos. A senior advocate of Nigeria, Mike Zakome, has said it is wrong for President Muhammadu Buhari to disobey the Supreme Court order on the old Naira notes. The Apex Court had in an interim order restrained the federal government from suspending the acceptance of the old Naira notes. President Buhari had in his broadcast yesterday unilaterally varied the Apex Court's excellent order of maintenance of status quo by directing the CBN governor to the effect that the old 200 Naira banknotes were released back into circulation for 60 days. But in a statement today, Zakome described the order by the president as a pronouncement that is more in the form of a military decree. Mr. Zakome said apart from being a direct assault on the Apex Court, Buhari's order could lead to chaos and anarchy. Similarly, Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai has faulted President Muhammadu Buhari's directive limiting the legal tender status of old notes to only 200 Naira, describing it as a total disregard of a Supreme Court on the matter. He noted that the misguided action of the Attorney General of the Federation to mislead the President into engaging in such public violation of the order of the highest court of the land shows how desperate the policy architects are to cause national chaos. In a state broadcast yesterday evening, Governor El-Rufai expressed concern that the peaceful coexistence as a state and a nation is being placed under deliberate danger using the intentional combination of fuel and cash supply disruptions. He accused those in the corridors of power of using the instrumentality of the federal government and the president as convenient covers to truncate the nation's democracy because they have personally lost out.
Calm and peaceful and support the lawful means being utilized to solve our problems. On behalf of the Kaduna State government, I wish to assure you that none of you would lose the money you have in old notes. Let no artificial or illegal deadline frighten you. Whether you live in towns, villages, or in our isolated rural communities, do not feel stampeded to deposit your old notes into the banks. Hold on to them. Continue to use them as legal tender as ordered by the Supreme Court of Nigeria. No deadline can render them worthless, ever. The law is on your side. The Central Bank of Nigeria Act 2007 in Section 20, subsection 3, and the Bills of the Exchange Act both oblige the Central Bank of Nigeria to recognize your old notes and give you value in new notes whenever you bring them to the CBN, even in the next 100 years. Therefore, as your governor, I wish to assure you that the Kaduna State government, in collaboration with elected legislators, our traditional institution, elected local government councils, markets and traders.
While the Jigawa State government has said the old Naira notes remain legal tender in the state pending the judgment of a Supreme Court, the State Commissioner for Information, Youth, Sports and Culture, Ibrahim Mamsa, stated this in a statement issued late yesterday night. This is coming despite the position of President Muhammadu Buhari that only old 200 naira note remains legal tender to April 10, while the 500 naira and 1,000 naira notes ceased to be won. However, Mr. Memsa said the state government was concerned about the conduct of some individuals and corporate bodies rejecting the old naira notes. He said the state has an injunction from the Supreme Court restraining the federal government either by itself or acting through the Central Bank of Nigeria from interfering with the February 10 deadline. The state government therefore urged the residents to report any trader or business organization refusing to accept the old naira notes as legal tender to the nearest appropriate authorities in the state. Meanwhile, presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Atiku Abubakar, has sympathized with Nigerians who lost their loved ones in a violent protest over naira scarcity. In a statement yesterday, the former vice president said the crisis occasioned by the naira redesign policy was conceived by the All Progressives Congress, APC. Mr. Abubakar, however, called for calm and urged the Nigerians to not let their frustrations manifest into violence, but rather channel that energy into voting out the ruling APC in the elections of 25th February and 11th March 2023. The PDP presidential candidate had on February 2nd advised the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, not to extend the February 10th deadline for the exchange of old naira notes with new ones. The former vice president had said any further extension would destroy the purpose and objective of the policy. And out of political matters, the ruling All Progressives Congress has released its primary election timetable for the governorship office in Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo State. The timetable was approved for release by the party after a series of meetings with its National Executive Committee and the National Working Committee in Abuja. The party disclosed that all candidates vying for the position in their respective state should come to the national headquarters in Wuse 2 in Abuja from February 15 to 22 to purchase and pick up their farms. The screening of aspirants will take place from the 21st of March to the 26th of March, while the result for the screening were published on March 28. The ruling party also announced that the primary election holds April 10, while the Congress to ratify the results of Imo and Bayelsa governorship primaries take place on April 11. Ahead of next week's presidential election, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, has identified leadership and corruption as major challenges stalling Nigeria's development. Mr. Obi disclosed this at a town hall meeting with the business community in Owerri, the Imo State capital, yesterday. Mr. Obi promised to provide purposeful leadership if elected, vowing to tackle all forms of corruption in the country. Before the meeting, the LP chieftain visited major markets in the state to woo the electorate. In the meantime, Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde says the G5 will work for Nigeria's unity as the country heads for the polls. Mr. Makinde, a member of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, made the comment when he received the presidential candidate of All Progressives Congress, APC, Bola Tinubu, and some chieftains of the party in Ibadan yesterday. The Oyo leader, who is part of the G5 of the aggrieved governors of the main opposition party, said the integrity group is after the country's unity. Mr. Makinde further re-echoed the G5's call for fairness and equity in power sharing in the country. The PDP chieftain added that the country has to evolve a system such that there is inclusivity, fairness, justice, and equity in how the country is being run.
We're saying that, look, if we have to choose between the unity of this country and our political aspirations, we will choose the unity of this country. So I alluded to the sacrifices made by our colleagues, the governors of APC from the northern part of this country, because we also handle your emergency. And they sacrificed, certain things for the unity of this country. So look, if we have to move forward as a people, we always say that we system such that there is inclusivity.
Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike has ruled out the possibility of him and his political allies reaching a last-minute deal with presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party (PDP), Atiku Abubakar. The governor spoke at a media chat held in Port Harcourt, Rivers State capital. Governor Wike said the time frame for resolving the grievance of a G5 is over and he's not ready to sit down with anybody again. The governor said he has informed the residents of Rivers of his preferred presidential candidate and that the people are ready to vote for the individual. He, however, failed to mention the name of a candidate. Inspector General of Police Usman Baba has announced that 310,973 police personnel, comprising conventional policemen, mobile police, special counter-terrorism unit, special forces, intelligence response team, and other sections of the police will be deployed to ensure a smooth conduct of general election. Speaking during the weekly ministerial briefing at the State House, he also disclosed that 93,495 personnel from other security agencies would complement the police, listing threats against the conduct of elections to include fuel scarcity and cash squeeze. The police chief expressed the belief that the situation will stabilize before the commencement of the upcoming exercise. The IGP equally asserted that an intelligence unit is in place to track and apprehend those who will engage in vote buying. You're watching Spring News at 12 on Western Spring Television. We'll be right back after this break.
Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and man's inhumanity against man. He was born July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa. Educated and trained as a successful legal practitioner, he took up the gauntlet of a human activist against segregation by the minority white suprematists in South Africa. At the climax of his trial for treason, orchestrated by the minority South African government, the great crusader for democratic equality was prepared to pay the supreme sacrifice to establish majority rule in his native land. He told white jurists that if achieving freedom for his people was worth his life, he was prepared to die. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in Robben Island, described as the most notorious prison in the world. It was from this same prison that he came out as a free man to assume office as South Africa's first black president in 1994. Western Spring Television identifies Nelson Mandela as a watershed character in history. Aminatu, the legendary Queen of Zazzau, is best known to historians as Queen Amina of Zaria, an old walled town and capital of the Hausa state of Zazzau. Amina was a great warrior and the first woman to rule the ancient kingdom of Zazzau. Her 34 years as queen witnessed an unprecedented expansion of Zazzau by conquests. Queen Amina of Zaria belongs to the class of Amazons by the might of her army and her strings of conquests. She opened Zaria to trans-border trade and was said to have initiated kola nut cultivation in the ancient kingdom. The Hausa Muslim figure was born in 1533 and died in 1610 at the age of 77 years. Folklores remember Aminatu, the Queen of Zazzau, as a brave, smart and talented leader whose giant statue now adorns the National Arts Theatre in Lagos, Nigeria, while many educational institutions bear her name. Western Spring Television identifies Queen Amina as a watershed character in history. Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905. Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history.
Welcome back on Spring News at 12 on Western Spring Television. Now to the rest of our stories. The National Agency for Food, Drug Administration and Control has destroyed fake drugs and expired products worth over 300 million naira, which were seized from pharmaceutical stores and other business enterprises across the states of the north-central geopolitical zone of the country. Speaking at a destruction exercise in Lafayette, the National State capital, yesterday, the Director General of NAFDAC, Professor Christiana Adeyeye, described the act of some Nigerians who sell such substances to other citizens as the gravest onslaught on human life. Mrs. Adeyeye, who was represented at the exercise by the NAFDAC Director, Investigation and Enforcement, Francis Ononiwu, said the products were seized from manufacturers, importers, and distributors in order to safeguard the health of the entire citizens of the nation. The NAFDAC DG noted that the importation, distribution, and sales of fake and unsafe products represents a grave onslaught on human life. On the foreign scene, Mozambique government has said at least 10 people have been killed in southern Mozambique, including the capital Maputo, after heavy rains unleashed floods over the past few days. The chair of the National Disaster Management Institute, Lucia Muhier, said 43,426 people were affected by the floods and 10 were killed. The governor of Maputo province, Julio Parak, urged the flood-prone communities to comply with government evacuation orders or risk being forcibly removed. The National Directorate for Water Resources Management had issued a flood alert for the southern Gaza province amid heavy rains. The United Nations has said humanitarian organizations were monitoring the situation and mobilizing to support government-led efforts. Outside Africa, North Korea has threatened to unleash persistent and strong counteractions in South Korea, and the United States carry out planned military exercise in the coming weeks. A spokesperson for North Korea's foreign ministry issued the warning today before the annual Freedom Shield joint military exercises of South Korea and the U.S. North Korea accused Washington of stoking tension by conducting earlier drills which included U.S. stealth fighters and a strategic bomber that can be equipped with nuclear weapons. The spokesperson reiterated a long-standing claim by Pyongyang that joint exercises between Washington and Seoul were preparations for an invasion of North Korea. North Korea issued the statement less than 2 hours after South Korea officials today announced a joint tabletop exercise with the U.S. next week aimed at owning Washington and Seoul's joint response to potential use of nuclear weapons by North Korea. Taiwan's military said it had spotted an unidentified object drifting above Dongyin, a Taiwanese-controlled island off China's coast yesterday. It later found a crash site on a shooting range. The The military added initial investigations suggested the remnants were part of a meteorological instrument. Taiwan's Defense Minister Chiu Kuo-cheng today said that officials would further investigate the crashed balloon, but would not jump to conclusions. This is the first time remnants of such a balloon have been discovered in Taiwan's offshore islands. Now talking sports, Enyimba International Football Club boss Finidi George has said his words will capitalize on Wednesday's 2-0 win against Shooting Stars to raise the tempo of the remaining matches in the NPFL series this season. The head coach spoke about the performance in the game, the team's winning run and Emeka Obiama's scoring form. The forward scored at either end of the first half to ensure his third consecutive brace on home turf, as well as another comfortable win for Enyimba, who have now bagged 9 points from their last 3 fixtures. It was a game that was expected to deliver quality, and it was barely underway when Obioma did exactly as they had done in the last 2 fixtures at the Enyimba Stadium, shooting the hosts into the lead. In England, Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta says his side is motivated for their trip to Villa after dropping down to second place after losing to Manchester City. Arteta, speaking ahead of tomorrow's Premier League match against Aston Villa, said his team have seen where the level is and know what needs to be done at that level. He stated that there were a lot of positive things to take from the season so far, adding that his side is highly motivated to do what it takes.
That's the opportunity. We talked about it for a few months now, the position that we are in, the way the team is playing, and all the right things that we have to continue to do to earn the right to continue to be there. And we've seen where the level is. We want to be at that level. We are in that journey together, and there were a lot of positive things to take from that game for sure.
Do you look at your players in your squad and you look at the game on Wednesday and you think, look, I know my players can match these Manchester City players week after week?
Well, I've seen it with my eyes in 2 games, but the level of efficiency has to be extremely good in every single ball to beat them at the end. But we are in that journey. We want to be there. Again, I repeat myself, but the team is highly motivated because just in case they didn't see it on the pitch or they didn't feel it after the game because of the result.
Before we end the news, as a recap of our top stories. The Lagos State Police Public Relations Officer Benjamin Hundeyin has confirmed that the initial unrest that broke out at the Mile 12 area of Lagos State is under control. The ruling All Progressives Congress has released its primary election timetable for the governorship office in Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo States. On the foreign scene, Mozambique government has said at least 10 people have been killed in southern Mozambique, including the capital Maputo, after heavy rains unleashed floods over the past few days. You can follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. That ends Spring News at 12. I am Okbayamuni. Thanks for watching.